Welcome to the Silicon Slopes Conversations. Today we're lucky to be joined by Jared Stewart, who is the founder of TribeHouse. How are you?
Fantastic.
This is a tribe kind of a little bit,
Absolutely.
Right? Absolutely. Yep. I'm looking forward to this for a couple of reasons. One, I recently attended my first TribeHouse event. Two, we've got a partnership with y'all called Slopes Collective. Three, this is going to be a fun and interesting story because you've actually put a lot of thought, time, and effort into this in the last 20 years. Mm-hmm. And it's a fun concept for people to get to understand and know. So with that, let's start with a little bit of your career, a little bit of your backstory, and ultimately what led into the founding story of TribeHouse.
Yeah. So entrepreneurial, pretty young. I actually just got my first job at Sprint. So Sprint was launching their new wireless division, Spring PCS. So that was kind of my first job out of school, and I was just selling for them and had a reasonable amount of success. And I decided to do my first entrepreneurial venture. So about a year in, I don't know if you guys remember Nextel. So the little walkie-talkies, right?
It was a walkie-talkie.
So I'm just like, hey, so Nextel was coming to market. It was like the new thing, right? It was like the iPhone at the time. So, I'm going to start a dealership selling that product because I thought lots of times you just sell what you know. So started a company called Compass, and we were the top Nextel dealer in the state. That first month, I just was on my own, and I did like $25,000, and just me. So I'm like, oh, this is going to be amazing. So, and like they said, because you can do you ever read E-Myth? You think you can because you can do the work of the business, you think you can run a business that does that work. I could not run a business that did that work. So basically I said, hey, let's build a business around this. Started hiring people, building all this infrastructure. Basically the demise of that business was Nextel sent me a letter and said, we loved paying you $250 a handset, but we're going to love paying you $75 a handset, even more. And we were out of business that day. And that's the day I decided I would never build on anyone else's architecture again. I have a really good friend that built a Facebook business, built on top of Facebook, had tens of millions of users, and they changed their algorithm, and he was out of business the next day as well. So there's real dangers associated with building on top of other people's architecture. There's also obviously benefits with it, but I'll never do it again.
Gotcha. So that led to...
So basically as that business kind of transitioned out, I had started as part of that, I started to realize that every opportunity I was having was based on a relationship, everything. And as I did my research, I was like, well, if we're going to build the wireless company, we should start building networks a little bit. Started attending as many as I could, and I started to realize that they weren't very polished. The systems weren't really designed to build high levels of connection. And so I actually had started what was called Corporate Alliance at the time, in conjunction with our wireless company. And so when the wireless company kind of folded, we ramped up Corporate Alliance. Our first year, we charged $200, not a month. A year. So we did not make money. But we had a lot of fun.
And that was $200 a year for you guys to come up with like structured networking.
Just lunch, a monthly lunch. Yeah.
Okay. But that's the start.
That's the genesis, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we just pounded on our craft every year, and we tried to just figure it out. It's actually where the book came from, was us testing on our members for years and saying what's actually working, what's not working. What actually is building high levels of trust and connection, what's actually not. And people think that the primary thing was that people think that proximity equals connection. Because you guys are all sitting close to each other right now. It doesn't mean you're building any type of real trust with the people next to you. That doesn't, if that were true, you could go to a BYU or Utah football game. You're surrounded by tens of thousands of people. But you walk out of that experience the exact same way you walked in, right? So you feel the energy of being a part of that collective group, but you don't get any of the benefits of the trust that could be acquired. So when we get a group like this together, we make sure that they don't exit the experience. And that's why we had to take a lunch into a 2-day event So the 2-day summits are where 80% of the actual value comes. Because in 2 days, with a very specific system, we don't do a lot of speakers or any of that kind of stuff, they're your best friends by the time you're done. I mean, you're deeply, deeply connected, and that translates into all kinds of business opportunities.
Yeah. And let me give my story of my first experience with TribeHouse, and then we're going to have to circle back a little bit into your learning and building off of Corporate Alliance into TribeHouse, but you're clearly interested in it. There is a science and craft to it, and it took a lot of research because you ended up writing a book. But I went to my first TribeHouse event in late winter, early spring at the Pendry Hotel up in Park City. And I was not overly aware of what you guys did and what your model was. It was, everything was going to be yes. I was going to say yes to everything. Everything. And so I walked in, and I was given a pamphlet and like really good stuff. I read the book before, and it was go to this table, and I got a text that said the same thing. And I sat down with a bunch of folks, and we asked each other questions based on what was in the book. And I'll be damned if 10 minutes later I didn't have some really good, fun connections. And to your point, they were like pretty open right out of the gate. And we switched tables, and we switched tables, and then there was lunch, and we switched tables. And by the end of that day, you're glad handing and, you know, talking and having a fun time. And then there was like fun things that night. Wake up again, kind of do the same thing. And right before lunch, there was like a critical questions, I think it was called.
Favorite part.
I'm with 4 dudes. They happen to all be dudes, but this is when it got real. One asked how he could be a better husband. One asked how he could deal with like a very tragic thing happening in his life with his granddaughter, like tears, crying. And other was like, how can I lose weight? Like, and I'm sitting there, I don't know these guys. And you have to answer. I'm looking at I don't have a watch, but I'm looking at the watch. I'm like, I hope we run out of time so they don't ask me how I can help, but you have to. And then I went out in the hallway, and I think I called Clint. I'm like, man, this thing's like pretty crazy. It's really cool. Like, these guys were just crying, and I didn't even know them 5 minutes ago, but now like I'd really like to help them out. And the night ended with singing, but it was
Karaoke,
amazing.
probably.
No.
Oh, we had somebody come up.
Yeah, Broadway.
Oh, yeah, that.
People that have sang on Broadway and Les Mis
Yeah.
and like Phantom of the Opera. And it was a private concert. And I was just like loving every minute of it. And David Osmond was the MC for the entire day, and he kept the trains running on time, and it was like all this high energy. And I left, and I called John, who's on our team, and I'm like, why have we not been like doing this for a long time? And loved every minute of it. And I had read the book before, Tribal Read. Let's talk a little bit about that. But as you're talking about that, kind of connect the Corporate Alliance $200, learning as you're going, to like that experience I just had, like the bridge.
Yeah, there's a lot packed in there, but we'll try to unpack it. So as we started that journey, we started to, like I said, the book was basically us testing for years and years, and for every principle we kept, we probably discarded 3 or 4. So we just kind of, we kept massaging it and trying to get through it and say, okay, what are the key principles here? One of the key things we discovered is what you were just talking about, is that it's our favorite quote internally. It's not ours, but the shortest distance between 2 people is a story. For whatever reason, storytelling allows you to build accelerated connection. And that's the goal, right? Because we have levels of relationship, 0 through 4. So, and I know 4 is somebody that you can call at 2 o'clock in the morning to help you make payroll. Not a lot of people have a lot of level 4s, right? So, but a level 2 and 3 is actually where a lot of business transacts. So you have an established learn, serve, grow cycle. And so what we were trying to do is like, hey, again, we know proximity doesn't equal connection. Just because we throw a bunch of people in a room doesn't mean they're going to connect. So we have to do what you just described, and we do the storytelling first. So not to give you our secret sauce, but here it is. Do the storytelling first, so that it creates the level of vulnerability. Brene Brown talks about. You guys ever? So you guys probably know about who she is, but she talks about vulnerability a lot. and it's actually a pretty essential part of what we do. In fact, she was speaking to the hearing impaired community, and she was asking, so what is the sign for vulnerability? And they're like, they did this, 2 knees, weak knees. And she's like, no, that's not the one. Is there any other one? And you guys have probably heard this, but it was this, right? So, and that's what you just described. Because at critical questions, everybody takes 10 minutes and they ask a question. Everything was designed, they're supposed to all be business questions. I'm dealing with an employee issue or whatever else, but they got stuff they know how to talk about, I guess. Because lots of times it does go into like the personal stuff, right? Because that's what's top of mind for them. And it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, that group is bonded in a really unique way, because the next time they have a conversation, it's just so much more empathetic and so much more connected. And the business comes as a natural consequence of the trust that's been acquired. If they trust you, then they're more likely to try to help your business be successful, right? That's the whole goal. What happened initially, what we were trying to avoid, what I was noticing with all the other organizations that were trying to do this, it was all built the same way, which was human ATM machines. You put people in the same room, you try to get a transaction, you exchange cards, business cards, and then you try to get people to do what you want them to do, but they don't even know you. And so what would happen is the people that were successful and they were trending were way less likely to enter in a networking environment like that. They don't even want to go. Yeah. So, but what you just described, that full day, you do want to go, right? And you want to go back again. And as long as you don't display the pitfalls, which the book talks about too, which is relationship arrogance and building relationships for the wrong reasons. And I'm talking a lot, but like one principle from the book is actually relationship arrogance. And that's this idea that you know who's going to help your business grow. You sit down at a table of 6 people, and we all mentally do this, and we say yes, no, 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 yes. You might have walked into this room today and did that. Yeah, and said, these are the 2 people I want to know. They're the ones that are worth my time. They'll help me strategically. And I get that we need to do that to a certain extent, but on average, people know about 250 people. And most of the people in the business world now know a lot more than that. That was actually an old stat from probably years ago. It's probably much higher than that. And the people that attend our events have, triple or quadruple that. But so when you build a relationship with one, a level 3 or level 4, you're actually building a relationship with hundreds of people. Does that make sense? And so you think that one person is the one that's going to change your life, that he's going to change your life, but it's actually her, right? So I know you're not a her. I was just making an analogy. So what you have to do when you get into these environments is just open yourself up to all of it. And so when you get into one of our environments, it feels safe to do that, because you have 2 days, and we're going to make sure you meet everybody. You don't have to be strategic, because we're just going to make sure we can organically do that for you.
Yeah, and it takes all the guesswork out of it, because you get a text and it's go to this table, and then it's like a whole new thing. There's even like some fun games, but through that you could figure out a lot of things about these people, and a lot of the time it was like laughing. A ton of the time it was laughing, and even at the good jokes, the bad jokes, and everything in between, and. The relationship arrogance, because I read the book, I finished it as I was driving into the parking lot. But I'll be damned if I didn't go in there and be like, no, 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 yes. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just literally read the book saying not to do that. And there's the stories you remember about relationship arrogance are when somebody doesn't do it, right? It's like, this guy on the airplane that was sloppy and disheveled. Turns out, guess what? Right, that's the stuff that makes it into the history books. Okay, so big fan of like those 2-day events, but there's more structure to it, including you guys have your own space, right? So the timeline now is you guys are like figuring things out. You've got like a book, and you're starting to have these events. At what point did you start to like plan out to the future and like rebranded as tribes? And the tribes that I'm aware of are like the TribeX, Tribe Angels. We have Slopes Collective. You can talk about all the other ones as well, but talk about like tailor-made for people that want to do that. Where in the cycle did you guys finally like dive in on that model?
Yeah, so you and I were talking about this a little earlier, but there's basically two types of businesses in my mind. There are iterative businesses that are building, so you got a mousetrap and you're going to build a better mousetrap, right? And then there's completely, disruptive businesses that are going to find a completely new way to catch mice. Dispense with the trap altogether and do something new. So I chose Plan B 20 years ago, and I don't necessarily recommend it because it's much harder. The advantage of doing that is that when you're kind of alone in the space because no one's. Tom Peters talks a lot about benchmarking, and when you're innovating a new space, there is no such thing as benchmarking because you're literally alone in the space. It's not that there's not things that are kind of comparable, but they're very, very different. So you can make a lot more money lots of times by building a better iPhone or building a better product or a little more iterative advance or getting a better product or service or feature. We decided we're like, hey, we're going to revolutionize the way that relationships get built, period. And so that's been really hard. There's been a lot of money and time and energy to kind of build and get to the point where we were pivoting, because there's a lot of choices you can make as an entrepreneur in terms of pivoting. And if you're in the innovative space, it requires a more rapid, accelerated pace, because you got to figure out how to get there quicker. So if you're an iterative, then it's not as big a deal, right? You're just kind of like, hey, we're just massaging this, we're getting closer. If you're out in space and you're like, hey, we actually need to take shots in this direction, in this direction, in this direction, all at the same time, and we don't have enough capital or resources. And that's where, like, I was looking at the data pretty recently, because I always want the actual data. It's, from what I can understand, it's about 75% of businesses fail in the first 15 years. And there's kind of a process by which you get there. So you get about a 1 in 4 chance of succeeding. And I actually don't believe that. I believe that it's not the product, it's not necessarily the service. So businesses don't fail, in my experience at least. Founders flee. So businesses don't fail, but founders flee. They get to the point where, like, this isn't, and all businesses aren't worth the sacrifice. There's businesses I did that weren't worth the sacrifice. This one, for whatever reason, I love it so much. And the world needs it in such a meaningful way that I'm willing to make any sacrifice. Probably more than I should, more than my wife thinks I should, for sure, because it's been 22 years of trying to beat on this craft and figure out how to build a model that makes sense, and we're finally there, but it does require a consistent and determined effort.
Yeah, and you've got to worry about people's jadedness towards, like, the word networking or
100%.
Getting together for an event. So as you guys think of new tribes, I'm sure there's a bunch of people that say, hey, you should do this tribe.
Yeah.
But it doesn't sound like you guys are fly-by-night on that, right? So a new tribe needs what to pass the sniff test and to ultimately make it into the portfolio?
Basically, the model we landed on was actually Marriott. So it's a hotel chain model is actually kind of what Marriott Corporation actually, I'll answer your question. Sorry, I know this is a little bit roundabout way to get there, but Marriott has host hotels, which I think is about an $8 or $9 billion company. And then you've got Marriott International, which is about a $30 billion company. The host hotels is actually the one that owns all the actual physical property. And then from what I understand, Marriott International is actually the management company. So why is the management company 3 times as big as the property company? You would think it would be reversed. It's because people want to buy hotels, but they don't want to run them. And if they do run them, I bet they run them into the ground because it's really hard. So it's really hard to run a tribe as well. So we tried franchising, we tried licensing, we did all kinds of things, and it was a nightmare. And we actually ended up buying all of those back and trying to figure out, okay, so we landed on that model where we'll partner with someone, and we'll build that together and basically build a new corporation or do a management agreement, and then we'll sign a contract back to manage the property. Does that make sense? So we might own 50% of a tribe, or we might own 100% of it. Just depends. And then we'll have a corporation, and we'll manage that because no one else knows how to do it. It's really hard to actually build and scale a new community and actually have it be profitable and successful. So that's our new model. So we'll partner. To your point, we have our inventory list. There's thousands of tribes. I think you guys know Paul Allen, the guy that started Ancestry. He's a good friend, and I went to DC and met with him, and he actually took these. he brought these 5 books out, and there were all these like big, huge books that had small print. And he's like, you know what all these are? He's like, they're all tribes. And like, they're all the associations in the country. He said, the associations are actually what built America. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah. So he's like, so basically we have a lot of work to do. And we, at this point, we just have to decide. I mean, we're looking at the crypto tribe right now. We're kind of like, is that space ready for it? You know, is it regulated enough? Do we need to wait another year or two? So now we're about to launch the mom tribe. Any niche specific with a high level of, they have to. The tribe means that they have a passion with that specific thing, or they have an occupation that's specific to that thing. And there's a lot. You know, basket weaving isn't high on our list, but anime and Comic-Con might be, you know, because they're deeply passionate. Harley riders are a good tribe. So there's the clear business tribes, and then there's all these other different ones. So, but in the beginning, there was an individual, then there was a family, and then there was a tribe. Like, tribe is one of the oldest words in the English language. It's the beginning, it's the foundational piece of all society. So we've just, as we've evolved, now we're organized more into our interests and the things that we're passionate about, and less by geography, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I think most people inherently understand that as well, right? Like, if you're going to go to war, you want a tribe versus just by yourself. And then you can go down from there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I go to a lot of events, and people think I like technology, and I'm actually good at it, right? So they're not fun for me. Whereas if I were to go to an event about John Deere tractors and like farming, I would have a riot. So with the cool things about the tribes is you can be with folks that speak your same language, but they come from all sorts of amazingly diverse backgrounds, and they're not one-trick ponies, but you don't have to spend the whole day thinking, man, I wish these conversations were different. At least that's what I've found so far. But then with all the various tribes, how do you guys, like, do you ever intermingle them? Is there any, like, a bigger all-in tribe that kind of umbrellas everything, or not?
We tried it with, it's called Tribe Fest, and it was too early, just because we had all the CFOs, all the CTOs, we had them all in the organization. We had 500 people in the room, and it was just like, you need the base structure in place. So we will do that eventually. Again, it was amazingly successful. It wasn't. It was like, it was amazing. It was just, you have to. This is one of the things that's been hardest for me to learn, is just how to be a really good actual CEO. And the founder part's really easy for me because I'm really visionary, and that's just natural. Watching the other side of the ledger, making sure that we're profitable, making sure we're not, you know, all of those kinds of things. I'm like, don't worry about that. Let's just build this amazingly the products, and everything will be great. But I'm starting to realize that the older I get and the more I'm involved in this, that you can't abdicate any role as the CEO. You might be able to. You need to find people that can do those roles better than you can, but you can't just dismiss it as unimportant. And so those are some of the. I'm just trying to. At this point, I'm just trying to be as humble as I can, and actually realize that if we're going to grow and actually turn into the company that I want this to become, then I'm going to have to evolve, and the company's going to have to evolve, and I'm going to have to make, you know, tough decisions. And I've started to do that, and actually it's been really great.
Yeah. We're going to open up for questions in a couple of minutes here, so if we could get the mic ready and then get your questions ready here for Jared. Most people are in a lot of tribes, whether they know it or not. Mm-hmm. My favorite tribes are quite strong, and the loyalty.
Formula One, I just heard, right?
Yeah, like maybe that's a tribe we can.
Yeah, no, someday. Yeah, we'll do it together.
But I guarantee there's a tribe of folks that are race enthusiasts, meaning they actually go out and do it. Yeah. And probably a lot of business gets done, weirdly enough, in those tribes. But my favorite tribes are the ones that the content and the experiences change and evolve, because then the stories are infinitely more fun, and you remember them, right? Mm-hmm. How do you guys, with your tribes, because at a certain point, these people are going to be pretty good friends, right? And they'll have had a lot of the same conversations over the years, and they'll probably have done a lot of business together. But you got to keep things fresh. Every brand has to, every group, every org. How do you guys go about, because your programming is robust and you've really thought through everything, but it still needs to probably evolve over time. How do you guys do that?
I'm of the philosophy where you have to be your chief, I don't know if you've heard of chief destruction officer. So like the CEO should also be the chief destruction officer as well, meaning you have to destroy yourself before the competitors get past where you are. Because that's what we were talking about benchmarking earlier. It's like if somebody's benchmarking off the iPhone and like, hey, in 5 years, we want to build an iPhone, something similar to that. By then, Apple is over here, right? And they're just like, they're not who's Apple benchmarking off of? Nobody, right? So they don't benchmark. They're the leader in that space. So to answer your question, yeah, we're constantly in destruction mode, and we're saying, okay, what specifically can we do that will shake this up? Because you can get in a rut really fast, and you're like, and it's because we're frankly quite far ahead of our competitors. It feels like you can just kind of take your foot off the gas and just do whatever. We don't do that, and probably maybe to a fault that we are aggressively innovating. I think the most successful organizations in today's culture, if you need a chief destruction officer. You need constant innovation, or you're not going to be successful.
Yeah, and you guys will see the writing on the wall fairly quickly. Like if there's less and less people at the events and less and less people signing up, and that's not a good feeling.
No.
Because we've been doing these Friday conversations for 7 years now, and we oftentimes think, well, I wonder if there's a better format, because it is just storytelling, right? So that's a cool thing.
Yeah.
And we mix up the guests, industries, all of that, and so far that seemed to work a little bit, because you give me a little bit of time, I'll be like, all right, there's going to be a cage, and there's going to be a death match at some point, right? And you jump to like weird stuff.
Well, you saw that Zuckerberg and
yeah, there you go.
That they just decided on. I don't know if it's going to be in the Colosseum, but it's going to be in Italy. So
eventually things devolve quickly.
Yeah, but those guys are obviously those guys are like thinking they're innovating at new levels, and I mean maybe it's crazy, maybe it's not, but it's definitely noteworthy.
Yeah, because Slope Summit is a big tribe, not really
Huge.
well organized as far as like the people, but a lot of people have been year after year after year, and for us, like, we need to tweak it enough to keep their interest going. So I like the destruction part of like, we're going to tear this down, and we're going to build something new there. You keep talking about like the growth of the business. So you guys have obviously had to land on pricing, and you've had to like test the waters and all of that, like any CEO in any group. What are the plans for like this continued growth? Because we're talking in Utah.
Yeah.
And last I checked, there's a lot of other parts of the world that are outside of Utah.
Yeah. So we just started our first national tribe. There's the Dream Big tribe, which is kind of our personal development tribe. We've got, our goal is to launch 2 or 3 a year. And then for the next 1 or 2 years, and then we want to get to where we're launching 5 to 10 a year. And then we want to get to where we're launching 50 a year. So, but you got to have really good systems, because right now launching 1 is kicking our butt. So, the Slopes Collective we were just talking about, it's a big, exciting opportunity. The network's going to be just ridiculously cool. And to collaborate with Silicon Slopes on that is a great honor for us. But we were talking earlier, I don't think there's another brand in Utah that accelerated to the, normally I know, because I've been building a brand in Utah for 20 years. What Silicon Slopes did, from catapulting from basically unknown to the top brand in Utah related to technology, in I think 12 to 24 months, it was meteoric. And then your ability to maintain in that space has been crazy. So all of our attention right now is focused on building that new tribe. But it's 6 months to 12 months, I think it'll be going crazy, and we'll start focusing on our next one. And then the goal is to replace yourself, right? Because what I'm noticing right now is I'm becoming the bottleneck. I'm a problem, because I'm the one that goes out and actually launches new tribes. We've got to figure out our system so that I'm not the bottleneck anymore. A lot of that's capital driven. we're really, really unique in that we've got like 100+ angel investors that have invested over 20 years. It's just, I'm not sure another company in the world's ever done it like that. It's just kind of how, because of the relationships, normally a company like ours would be VC backed and you'd have tens of millions of dollars to try to pull this off. We're not that company. We've done it a completely different way. I love how we've done it. We've done it with our key relationships and the people we love. It's kind of cool, actually. So I'm very territorial of our investors. I love them so much because they took a lot of risks, and it's a very unique investment group, I think, in the world.
Yeah, I was unaware of that. I was not sure how you guys had kept all the lights on. So.
Nope, that's how we kept the lights on. People seeing what was possible, building level 3 and 4. Literally, our own system helped propagate our own ability to be successful.
Yeah, very cool.
So.
Let's pass the microphone around. I think Parley's in the back there. Raise your hand if you've got questions for Jared. Over, there we go, front. Ladies first.
Okay, I had my question already, and then you started talking about knowing when it was time to quit.
Yeah.
I missed She Suite.
Yes.
Are we going to start something up like that again?
Yes, we are. I think we're still in process. Every tribe, the most important part of every tribe has to have a leader. And so we are in the process of trying to figure out exactly. So I think we're still operating inside the TribeX brand. She Suite is actually, we got a cease and desist letter from somewhere in Ohio that name is taken. So don't say that anymore.
Sorry, old school.
Yeah, that was part of the challenge. So right now it's called like TribeX Women or something. I don't know. But yes, we are very committed to making sure that we find a way to align our female entrepreneurs and help them build the culture and the connections they need. So
Perfect. Thank you.
You bet.
Right up here in the front.
Hi, Jared. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.
Thank you for all you've shared. Wanted to ask if you've done a lot of introspection here, and if you were to look back and say, if I had a do-over, knowing what you know today, go back to the beginning, what could you share with people who are looking to innovate in a new space, even in your own space? What would you do to get to the finish line faster? Or better, or however you feel?
No, it's always hard because all of your experiences inform all your future decisions. It's hard to get rid of any of them. I mean, they're really frustrating, but you can't learn from other people. I think one of the big, like I remember sitting down with a venture capitalist really early in our experience, and he actually gave me a really good point. He's like, Jared, if you can get people to speak your language, it's called sticky culture. So that's why when we talk about TribeHouse culture or corporate alliance culture back in the day, learn, serve, grow, relationship arrogance, just because, like, if you're trying to build something, create some kind of story around, because again, the shortest distance between two people is a story, but the shortest distance between you and your customer and the brand is your story. So if you're not effectively storytelling, if there's not a real, and they're not using your language and you can't get them to engage in that way, and you may or may not be able to do that based on if it's super product driven, it can be hard to create narratives that actually make sense to the consumer. But yeah, I would, if I was going to give advice, the other thing is to be really, really humble. Like, listen to the people around you, try to understand what they're saying, even if you don't agree. It can still inform some of your future decisions. And then also, having said that, trust your gut. Like the founder's job is to lead the organization and to lead it to whatever destination it's going to. There's no one else that can, if you're building something and you're the founder of that, like, you know what you're building. So you have to stay true to that as well, while at the same time being humble enough to receive pivots and perspective changes and information from other people as well.
Grew up hanging out with Jared's brother George. It's great memories. All right, it's not $200 anymore. What is the monetization and direction that you're going?
Yeah, so we try to build as many tiers as we can. So our least expensive program is $299 a month. So $300 a month. That's called our Power Tribes. That will get specific access. And then we're into the if you do the 2 retreats, our biggest expense, we've actually kept our memberships the same price for almost 10 years now. And just think about what inflation has done, right? So we've worked really hard to keep our pricing where it is, but it's $8,000 a year. It does include, or $699 a month, and that includes both your retreats, so the 2-day, 2-night experiences. Now, if it's Slopes Collective, that's a little higher price point, and there's some qualifiers that are required for that. I'm happy to walk you through that too. I don't know if I'm free to disclose that here, but we can. That'll be our highest price point, and frankly, the value that's being driven from that organization is going to be really stunning. So, but yeah, we're excited.
And I got the impression, I could be way off, is that oftentimes companies might pay for their employees.
It just depends. So one of the things we learned, relationship arrogance aside, it's still important you organize groups into peers. So, for instance, if you were at that, I don't know if you were at Tribe Angels or Tribe X, but there's a business owner specific standard. So, because when we're getting together in those groups of 6, they're literally advising each other. So, if you've got a wet behind the ears, you're a salesperson and sitting with a business owner that's working on challenges related to their business and employees and making payroll. Like, you can't sit them down at the table and have a conversation that's going to help them be successful in their business. That's why the tribes are organized the way they are, is because, hey, these peers need to be together because they're the ones that can best help and mentor each other. And so, yeah, that's part of the challenge, is just like, so if it's an employee, they'd have more likely to be a part of like a different group. If it's a business owner, they're in a group. If there's a tech leader, they're in a different group. That's literally what tribes are designed to do.
Yeah. And it works really, really well because, again, relationship arrogance aside, you can always tell, usually by their eye expression and facial expression, if they're in mentor mode or listening mode,
Yeah.
or if they're talking to somebody that's like commiserating and like they're working on the same issues.
Yeah,
and
if
they
you're
have
not in the
same
right tribe, you're
stars.
just as uncomfortable if you're the one that doesn't feel qualified to be there. It just doesn't.
Yeah.
So relationship arrogance is an important key, but peer-based mentoring and connection is actually essential as well.
Yeah.
Because I know the two of you up there, I'm going to take a little bit of liberty to make a couple points that I think are really important, but then also end with an important question to Jared. What most people don't probably know about you, Jared, is I've gotten to know you, and you admitted that you historically have been an introvert. You grew up an introvert, and you had to learn to come out of that, and I think a lot of the lessons have been learned, and the transformative nature of what you've built is incredible. To this point, Garrett was invited to a number of those, many times by me, just for the record, and he would always say, not my thing, not my jam, no thanks. And at one point, when we were building this relationship for Slopes Collective, I said, Garrett, you have to go and experience it so you know. So I pushed him off the ledge, and you heard him today. He loved it. It's incredible, which is awesome of you, Garrett. You jump out of your comfort zone, and now you've become an advocate for it. But Jared, what advice would you give to both individuals, team members, others, if they don't have an ultra pushy person like me shoving them off the cliff to go? How can one, because it's easy to say, oh, just jump, just go. But for introverts, that's not easy at all. In fact, it's debilitating often, right? So how can leaders and individuals in community take that leap, but psychologically get there where it's a safer step?
It's a really great question. And like, just the conversation Garrett and I just had right before this, I'm like, you are fascinating. Like, he's got like, but again, it's the storytelling part, right? And Garrett was like, I'll just tell you all about myself. And we were just having this conversation. I'm like, oh yeah, so like, to your point, perfect relationship, like you're good at this, right? But you might be introverted too. I don't know if you are or not. I am. So to John's point, yes, I'm deeply introverted. I don't want to be up here right now. Like, all of this is stressful for me, but I also recognize it's part of my job. And I love my job enough to do these kinds of things. So that's why you'll always see David Osmond on stage. You'll see different, like over the 22-year history, I very rarely get up on stage because I don't want to. And it was really stressful walking in. That's one of the reasons I think I was successful at building an environment that actually made sense for introverts, is because like an introvert will walk into a room, I don't know how many of you are extroverts or introverts, but they'll walk into a room like this and it will be like deeply scary and like you just want to leave. I remember David Osborne like, hey, let's go up to the Capitol. We have all these people. There's this big, we'll be at the Rotunda. There's all these people. And he, like an hour late into the event, he's like, he had to find me in a corner sitting in a chair. He's like, what are you doing? Don't you like run a company that does it? I'm like, I don't want to be here at all. Why do you think we hired you? Like, that's like, I don't want, that's not my, just not my nature. Does that make sense? So a mix and mingle is terrible for me. But if you put us at a table like you just described, we talk about real stuff and we go deep, which introverts like, and you talk about that becomes very beautiful. I love it. And so, and I could spend all day in the critical questions especially. I could go from critical question to critical question and be happy for probably 2 days straight. Because it's deep, it's meaningful, it's connective. I don't feel weird. It's all organized, so I don't have to guess what I'm doing next. So yes, I think we've built a system that's designed not just for introverts. Extroverts love it even more because they get everything they want. Plus, they get to hang out with some introverts. But it was the biggest business opportunity for me because I'd walk into the experiences like this and I would just look at people. Again, proximity doesn't equal connection. Just because you're in the same room doesn't mean you're building any trust with people in that room. Lots of times you'll just walk out the same way. And it's good to listen to like a speaker or somebody talk to you, but it's way cooler to actually walk out with some relationship capital that might transform your life. So anyway.
No, that's a great question. Me and John should be in the delusional tribe where he's actually right. He told me many times to go, so I'm really glad I did.
Well, you're not alone. Most people don't want to go.
Yeah.
Thank you. So Jared, I've participated in TribeHouse for a while, and it's been fascinating. I've met people who I've ended up investing in their companies. I've taken my CEOs of startups that I've invested in there so they can meet people. It's really fascinating how if you don't have predisposition and a preconception of who's going to be helping you, by the time you're done going through a TribeHouse experience, you've got lots of people wanting to help in various ways. So is that what the collective is going to be doing, same as the other tribes?
Yeah. Again, just all it is a hyper focus, right? So this will be the Slopes Collective will be C-suite executives and tech companies specifically. So initially, we're okay to share this. So the idea here is that they have decision-making power, but at the same time, it's not like, hey, it's just for your CFO or your CTO or your CEO. Why don't you actually just send your best relationship person, right? So send your best C-suite relationship person to the event, and let's connect them with all the other best relationship people in all the other tech companies, and just watch what happens. You will have magic like you can't believe in terms of the connectivity, because lots of times people just don't know. Again, our whole model is built on what we call learn, serve, grow. So to be effective, you have to learn about other people. You have to find ways to serve their interests, and naturally over time they'll reciprocate. So you have to invest. Again, we're not in the human ATM, but that's what we're replacing. We're replacing the old mousetrap of the human ATM machine for networking, and replacing it with this other model that's designed around trust. It's about learning about people and serving their interests first, and them naturally reciprocating. And because as a salesperson at the very beginning, I just hated the sales process. It was so broken. I felt dirty. Like I'm just like, I just want to get money from you, and I'm going to figure out what I need to say so that you'll buy my product, And maybe it's a great product, maybe it's an average product. I don't know. I don't really make the cell phone or whatever I was selling at the time. But when it transitioned into like building trust, I'm like, and that's why I've been willing to sacrifice for this company in other ways why I wouldn't necessarily for product-driven companies, because I'm like, I see the impact it's making. I'm like, oh, this feels really good. We're replacing all of this nastiness with all of this beauty, and like I sleep well at night even though things are hard. So because we're making something better, and I think that's what an entrepreneur should do, is make the world better.
Yeah, well said. And send your best relationship people. That's pretty smart. I hope we've done a good job here of like describing what TribeHouse is and how much fun it is, and also like you're going to get like amazing results in like a cool, fun, innovative way. So color me impressed. Thank you for jumping up on stage, even though you don't like to do it. On that note, are you willing to stick around and talk to people?
Yeah, of course. I'll hang
right.
out.
a
Let's
little
talk
bit
about
more
something
comfortable
deep,
for
though,
you.
right? I'm not good at the mixing and mingling, so you'll have to Anyway, I'll do fine.
Okay, very cool. Thank you so much, Jared. Congrats to you and your team on everything you built.
Thank you. Appreciate it.